Come in.
Hey, and welcome to the third part of my Sansa costume journey. In case you haven't watched the first two parts, I will leave links down in the description. Thank you so much for those who commented in the first two videos. In this video I will show you some of the process of figuring out how to turn the dress from pictures to real life. This video is a bit longer than the previous ones. Please tell me if you think this is too long or too short. So I started with making a list of everything I need to do for every piece of the costume. I have now divided this costume to wig, dress, fur, cloak, harness, necklaces, gloves, shoes, and fur cuffs. Then I thought of things I have to do for every piece and listed them so I don't miss anything. If I ever feel like I'm stuck, I can see how many steps I have left. For example, for the harness, I listed things like make a pattern, figure out what the fastening is like, buy materials, cut, shade, and make it look used. Then I sketched the dress onto paper, just to take a better look at the proportions, details, and seams. This is a very important step when working with a costume like this. I want everything to be just right. I had stared at pictures of the dress for weeks, but I was so blind that it took me 1 week to realize the dress actually opens from the front, and there is no buttons or lacing in the back. So some of the drawings I made in these clips are wrong. I did see that 2 of her other dresses open from the front, but it isn't as clear with this one in my opinion. Then I jumped to making the pattern for the dress. If you have no experience with patterns, I would recommend buying a shirt pattern and making one shirt with it, or even better, buying a sewing book that comes with patterns. Some might think that fuck it, I can just draw my own patterns, and yes, you can. If you're thinking about either winging it or not making a costume at all, you should definitely just do it. With patterns, you just usually get good results on the first try. So if you don't own any patterns and you want to buy one for this project, choose a pattern for non-stretch fabrics if your fabric does not have stretch. You could pick any pattern and alter it. I'm using one with a side bust dart. Mine is quite fitted and it also has a fisheye dart in the front and back, but I don't think I will use those. I got this pattern sheet or whatever this is called from a book called Patterns for Everyone, but this is a Finnish book, so I can only recommend it to people who can read Finnish. However, you can use any pattern for this dress by following what I did, or you can Google info about altering patterns. This all might seem so confusing, but bear with me, it's not that hard. First, I measured my bust, waist and hip and divided each in half. Then I figured out what size I am by measuring the bust, waist and hip on the pattern sheet, and I was something between sizes M and L. I usually wear a size S, but I know that individual patterns might have strange sizing. I went with size M. I also measured the size of the sleeve and my arm just to make sure. Then I traced the patterns to regular paper. If you are an absolute mad lad, you could also cut the pattern sheet up in some cases. You could also first trace along the lines on the pattern sheet with a black marker or a highlighter, so you can see the lines, but I didn't. That's why I look like Quasimodo and you can enjoy the look of my back here. You can see I'm not drawing the rest of the pattern, but I did do that later. I'm not completely sure how long I need the bodice to be. I will just cut all the excess off if needed. Did you know that the actors are probably wearing multiple layers of undergarments under the big dresses? I later made a mock-up with this pattern and I might go half or one size up so I can wear this dress in the winter too. After tracing the front bodice piece, I extended the shoulder because the pattern had a very open neckline. I wasn't sure about how long it should be and I will add 1 centimeter more to it later. You could find a correct measurement from a shirt that fits you or just by measuring your shoulder carefully. Then I traced the sleeve, measured how wide I want the sleeve opening to be where it ends on my wrist, measured how long I want the sleeve to be, and just extended it like that. Pretty straightforward, I think. At this point, I would like to remind you that patterns are usually not symmetrical from the front and back. Also, I am not a professional. Then I started to work with the leather body harness. I started with putting trash bags on my mannequin and then I covered the right parts with tape. This is a lovely piece in the costume and I hope I will get this one to fit as nicely as I can. I'm so glad I just bought this used vintage mannequin because making this piece would be very hard by myself without one. It was also very hard to find pictures of the harness from the back, and I'm still not sure of how the piece in the show is constructed. If the harness is made out of one piece, as it looks like, they would need a skin that is like 3 meters long. This is what I think it looks like. I drew on the area where I think the harness would be on and spent some time thinking that how to make it really stay put once it is on me. I would also like to add elastics to somewhere just to make sure it will be comfortable to wear. I think those could be hidden behind the neck or in the back where the crisscross happens. I would also love to use Worbla for this part, but I'm not sure if I will because it is quite expensive. I might continue working with this piece when the dress is ready and I can make sure that I will get everything right. Then it was time to celebrate Vappu, and then we had some snow because why not, and then I continued with the dress. I tried to figure out how wide the skirt is, and I used tissues. They seem to be very handy for this task. First, I tried with 3/4 of a circle, and it was too big, so I think Sansa's dress is like half of a circle wide. I think it is divided to 6 panels. I will first try it with a half circle skirt divided to 6 panels, and if it seems too big, it is easy to make it smaller. Then I made some plans of how to put a zipper or buttons in the back. This was before I realized that the dress opens from the front, so I will redo all of these drawings and plans later. Here I'm just quickly drawing the rest of the pattern piece. Next, we will move the bust dart. Remember the triangle in the front of the pattern? That is a typical side bust dart. You will find those in most of women's fancy shirts. Those exist to make room for the bust, but they can be used to make room for any part of the body, like the bootay. Darts are usually something that people forget if they just wing it and make their own patterns. You don't necessarily need darts for everything, but because the human body is 3-dimensional, we usually benefit from using darts. Technically, we could just use the dart that my pattern already has, but it would be very visible, so I will move it to somewhere where it can't be seen. I will move it to the seam where the side panel meets the front panel. I'm not sure if that is even called a dart anymore after that, but I don't care. It is very easy, don't worry. If you want to try it, but you don't understand my guide, I will link a great tutorial in the description. Darts like these point to the apex, which is the highest point of the bust. I marked them with yellow stars. I measured my apex just to make sure it is very close to the one in the pattern. This does not really matter in this costume actually. If you are brave enough, you can just wing all of it. So what we are doing here is closing the existing dart and opening it in the place where we actually want it. I know that I want the front panel to be from apex to apex, blue lines, and then I measured how wide I want it to be at my waist, green lines. Then we will draw a line using those 2 measurements, and that makes the pink line. And that's where we are here. You can see the line on my pattern. I'm using my small scissors to punch through the paper to get the apex point to the next paper. Then I'm extending this line and the dart lines just to be sure. Then I'm drawing from the new dart line to the first old dart line. Now we have drawn an L shape to the paper. Then we will tilt the pattern by pushing down at the apex with the scissors and moving the pattern just enough that we can continue drawing from the other side of the dart. Then we will stop drawing at the same line as where we started, but because of the tilt we made, we will have an opening there. And that is the new dart. Then I took my fancy new ruler and drew lines from the apex point to the opening. Measured about 1.5 centimeters away from the apex point and drew the real dart lines. This is done to prevent any pointiness, but it really isn't needed in this dress, I just did it anyways. Then I tried to find where the rest of the seam would go by making lines with a slight curve towards the midpoint of the shoulder. Then I cut the pattern out without cutting away the paper between the dart lines. I just folded it and my camera actually stopped recording, sorry. I had some storage problems when filming this video because I had filmed so much material. I stared at the pattern for a while and everything looked quite good. I adjusted the necklines a bit and then I started to make a test version with the pattern. I had some shirt fabrics in my stash, so I just grabbed some and made a shirt with this pattern. As I mentioned before, based on my test version, I might make the final dress 1 or a half size bigger. I still haven't bought the fabric for the fur, because it is so hard to find anything with a reasonable price. Every time I find something, this happens. First it looks okay, and then the shipping is almost as expensive as the fabric itself. I hate this. But there you go. I hope you learned something from this video. I'm sure I will get to doing things soon. Now I just wanted to do some talking. This is such a big costume that I think it seems like I have done nothing, but in reality I have done so much of the work in my head already. Now I feel like most of the job is already done. If we compare this project to like making Jon's sword. With the sword you would just download a picture of it, scale it to your height, and then most of the work would be actually carving, sanding, priming, painting, shading, and so on. With this dress I have now done hours of work, and once the patterns are done, all that is left is just feeding it through your sewing machine pretty much. But we'll see. Perhaps my patterns are total garbage and I will have to redo it all. Who knows? I started to think about all the great characters and costumes in the show. I wanted to give a quick opinion about a few of them. I would like to make other costumes from Game of Thrones, so if you really want to see one of these or any of the costumes in the show come to life, leave a comment, DM me in Instagram or send me an email, whatever works for you. After seeing what happened to Varys, I realized how much I enjoyed his costumes. He is usually wearing something that looks like a dress, and I love all of them. This costume from season 6 could be an easy one to do, although it is not as iconic as his King's Landing costumes. Other easy options are, for example, Melisandre from season 8 riding the horse. In fact, this could be the easiest costume to make in the whole show. You just need a lot of flowy, natural looking fabrics. Arya in Bravos from season 6. The black dress type of thing she was wearing for a while would also be a great and easy costume. Gendry with his iconic sweaty and dirty shirt from season 8. Great for someone who wants to show a bit of skin. Arya from season 8 with the layers that she wears under the leather vest and cape. Then for the more complex costumes, I enjoyed Missandei's costume from season 7 and 8. I think this is the most beautiful female costume with pants. Basically all of Cersei's black outfits. I love all of them. I think this is the most simple one of them. Lyanna, I absolutely love her. What a great actor also. Peter and his majestic black coat. This could be a great option to do with your friend. And I will have to mention at least one from Jon and Dany. Did I miss something important? Let me know in the comments. I really hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.